Good evening, everyone. This is John Craig, and this is
Sandy.
So enthusiastic there.
I know my blanket was over there. I was like, why is that over there?
It's so good to be with y'all. Do you know what day today is? It's the third day of the week. It's time to rumble. No, I'm just kidding.
Why?
No,
Why do you rumble on the third day?
Because it's time to walk in spirit and truth. That's why.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that's called rumbling?
No, I just made that up.
It does. I'm trying to fit the pieces together, how that thought came into your head.
It's just a thought. Random thoughts come into my head, kind of like the shower thoughts from Let Us Reason Together.
Oh.
Yeah, they're just like random thoughts, things that make you go, that's weird. So,
well, I say that all the time about you. Because what can I say? It is weird.
All right. 3 days after my mom and dad's anniversary, that's what Joe, the warrior, says. Hi, Joe. How are you this evening? It's good to see you there in the chat room. Glad to have you with us this evening.
We have a special day coming up tomorrow.
We have a special day tomorrow.
It's our granddaughter's 3rd birthday.
Is it already here?
Yes.
The 27th?
Our granddaughter is 3 tomorrow. Can you believe it?
Oh.
3 tomorrow.
3 years old. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, and yet it feels like it's been forever. Doesn't it seem like that?
No, it doesn't seem like she could possibly be 3 to me. That's to me. Anyway. Well, for those of you that are from our Life of Worship community, we want to tell you, hey, we are praying. We lost a dear lady in our congregation yesterday. Found out about it today, and she was vital. And so you guys continue to pray for the family, for Shirley Elton, and we love her and we're glad and celebrating with her. But my goodness, she just exuded Yeshua.
Yeah.
And his pursuit of truth and her pursuit of truth through the Torah and being filled with the Spirit. And there's nobody like her, and she will be greatly missed. So we are with you as well and feeling that loss. So please don't think that because we're continuing the program tonight that we don't feel it. We absolutely do. And who are we? We are John and Sandi Craig from Life of Worship in Amarillo, Texas. And we are glad that you are here with us for sure. We are.
We really are. And, certainly Shirley is one of those women who she just was like a grandmotherly love. I mean, she told you she in the bridge, and she would just come up to you and just say, "I love you." And that was really precious. There's just, one of those precious women that constantly say that and just say, I don't care what's going on in your life. I love you anyway.
Well, I want to give a testimony to that. And we'll probably do it on Shabbat too. One of the ladies that text what had happened, I told her, and she was like, she and Celia are the only ones that would constantly say, "I love you."
Isn't that right? Yeah.
And so here, folks, if you're part of Life of Worship or you're in your own community, you need to step up to the plate. And by the way, this wasn't expected. She went to work, and she's 75, 76 years old. She went to work, came home, sat in her chair, and her husband came home and she was gone. So it's potentially a sweet way to go, but nonetheless, she is going to be greatly missed because, just as Joe said, she's a sweet, sweet lady. And her voice she was probably my biggest encourager in preaching and teaching. I'm telling you, she was so encouraging. In fact, when I did the tour portion this last Shabbat, she said, "I'm so glad we have such great teachers here at Life of Worship." And so she's definitely going to be missed for many, 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 many reasons. But as Joe said, she went to be with Papa, and she went to rest with him in his arms. And I'm telling you, that girl wants to worship and dance and praise, so she's doing it now. So hallelujah for that.
That's right. That is right. And just think, she's got all of the weight of this world off her shoulders, and she was
she called you almost every day.
She
so
did.
You guys talk about what was going on in the world. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, that's exactly right. I guess I was a sounding board for her.
That's right.
It's
But
okay.
she's part of our family. So.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, with that said,
Did you have news?
I have some thoughts, and I just want.
Okay. Well, we need to put your thoughts. Do we need to put your thoughts in news?
Okay.
So we do. So talk for a second
Okay.
while I figure that out.
Well, and by the way, while she's doing that, I do want to say over on Telegram, I've got my own group going, and it's called the Craig Report. So if you'd like to check up on some of the things that I'm reporting on at the Craig Report, I don't have any videos or anything that I pop up with my own stuff at this point in time, but I am just throwing different types of headlines that are out there that some people may not be getting and kind of putting them in a kind of summarizing some things that's catching my attention. So if you want to peruse some of those things, and it's certainly there. It's at the Craig Report. And over at Telegram, a lot of people don't know how to use that. So on the left-hand column, that's where all your people show up. And at the top of that column says search. Just type in the Craig Report and enjoy my group.
Okay. So you plugged your group?
So I plugged my group. Yeah.
Are you ready for the news?
I'm ready for the news. Well, hey, this is John Craig, and you're listening to the Craig Report here in the middle of Walking in Spirit of Truth. And just wanted to give you a couple highlights of things that are going on. I don't want you to be discouraged as to what's going on with the government and what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., involving President Trump and Joe Biden and all that sort of stuff. I want you to be encouraged because, first off, our kingdom is not of this world. We belong to a king who has his own kingdom and his own constitution, which is called the Torah, and that's what we follow and that's what we live. On the other hand, we live in a society where we need to participate in and be part of, and not to give up hope and not to bunker down or hunker down or escape or avoid or try to say, okay, all is lost. No, we have an assignment that we need to live out here on this planet. And in this nation and in the state that you live in and the city that you live in, we are to participate and make sure our voices are being heard. That's why as long as I have voice, and I hope as long as you have voice, that you will use your voice and let it be heard. And so how do you do that? Well, you got to stay up with the current events that are going on. Right now, Joe Biden is signing left and right all sorts of executive orders, and he started on day one, and those numbers are increasing daily. The sad thing is he even made a comment, because that mic's always going, and he made a comment that says, I don't even know what I'm signing. Interesting enough, sometimes he's signing with his left hand and sometimes he's signing with his right hand. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's just the camera being reversed or whatever it is, but it's very interesting. And it's also very interesting that where he's signing it, it's not at the Resolute desk. It seems to be at a round table in a room that looks similar to the Oval Office. And but there's a parking lot through the window on some of the scenes. It almost looks like a set. And one comment that was mentioned about it is that someone decided to take a photo and post it, and it actually looked like a Hollywood set. So who knows where Joe Biden is right now? However, instead of having a military plane pick him up to take him into Washington, D.C. last week, he had to take a private jet because the military wouldn't send one. Isn't that interesting? And yet, on the other hand, we had upwards of over 40,000 troops. Some say as many as 60,000 National Guard that were called up for the inauguration time. And many of those are still in place, in position, not only at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., but also at other various state capitals around the nation. And it makes you wonder what's going on. Well, one of the things is I've heard two sides of the story. One side of the story is to say, hey, look, it's actually what they call a black pill. A black pill is simply say, hey, look, it's over and done with. All I have is negative stuff to say. I'm done. I'm just going to, go from there. But on the other side, if you've been red pilled, you're awake to what's going on, but you've also gotten to the point where being truly red pilled means that you're not in a state of just a state of awareness. It means that you're in a state of taking that awareness and doing something with it. And that's why I want to encourage you, like what this Texan is doing that just came out in an article today over at the HalTurnerRadioShow.com, which says that a bill was introduced for Texans to vote on seceding from the USA. And so we also know that there's at least 8 other states that if Texas seceded, they would come with Texas, but basically that they are bringing up a referendum at this point in time by which they will begin the process and create a joint committee to develop a plan for achieving Texas independence, and then eventually bring it out. And some have said as early as November of 2021 for the people of the state of Texas to vote. And the request is to ask all representatives and senators in the state of Texas to let Texas citizens vote. So there is a process that's going on. If you're in a state and you know that state is having problems and what happened in the elections, and then maybe that's something that you can be bringing up to your state legislatures and senators and begin part of the process. If you're in one of those states that are close to Texas that have mentioned that they would go with Texas, if Texas did that, then you can, certainly let your voices be heard there. And one of the things too that it's just really, so one thing is a voice, and one of the things that we need to do is know who our state representatives are, our state senators, who they are, anybody that's representing us in our state capitals, and as well as who's representing us in Congress and our senators, because this is what's crucial right now with these executive orders. This is one thing I got this wrong on Shabbat when I was mentioning it to our congregation, that on the day that President Trump had set an executive order to recognize as Pro-Life Day, not only recognizing the life that's in the womb of the mother, but also children under the age of 3, those that are infirm, those that are handicapped, those that are elderly, those that are sickly, all of those that do not seem to fit the nice, healthy mold of an American citizen. He says we're going to recognize pro-life and how all lives matter. And so with that recognition of what's going on, we need to, and as he did that, then what happened? My phone was ringing there on the side, so it's distracted me. But what happened is Joe Biden then takes an executive order and to codify Roe versus Wade. Do you think that was a setup? I think that was a setup. And in other words, to take Roe versus Wade, which was a Supreme Court decision, and by that edict from the Supreme Court has allegedly become the law of the land. But we know that only Congress can enact laws. That isn't. We know that technically abortion is not legal in the United States of America on the fact that there needs to be legislation that allows it. But we do know that there's multiple states that have come up with their own legislation that supports abortion, and there's others that have not. Well, Joe Biden signed the executive order to codify it. In other words, it's the process by which they can do a formal law that he's going to push into Congress. And this is why we need to contact our representatives to make sure that they vote against us, that they're watching them, especially if they're a Republican who seems to be going rhino on us. And then the other thing is our senators represent us in the Congress. And they have the power, if they are especially if they're a Republican senator, and many of them have lost their backbone, but if they are truly representing us and they are truly going to be standing on the platform of the Republican Party that is pro-life, then they need to be standing up and joining together to filibuster any such legislative action that comes from the House of Representatives to say, no, we're not going to allow it, and stand up. So talk to your senators. The more people that speak out, the more of a backbone that these politicians will have. So keep those things in mind as we move forward. These are talking points that that we need to make sure that they're listening. Now, here's something else, and I mentioned it before, and I believe it was right here on the same program, and this has to do, what can we do to say we do not agree with what's going on, not only in Congress, where what happened leading up to and on the 20th of January, is that there was a coup d'etat that took place, a takeover of the U.S. government to throw out the votes of the American people and to install their own representative who is installed not only as what they say president, but also a tyrant, a despot, one who is ruling from the executive office and who has the full support, because he's a puppet of those leadership within Congress like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Schiff, and all of those, the Nadler, and all of those guys that are like that. Which brings me to the next point that I wanted to bring up. Unprecedentedly, and it's also unheard of, and it's unconstitutional, but the House didn't even take it to committee to examine the evidence. They impeached President Trump. You all know that. They took it to the floor immediately, said, this is the violation. President Trump incited these people to acts of sedition. President Trump is guilty, and they sent it over to the Senate, by which the Senate sits as a jury before a judge who is supposed to be the chief of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Sorry, I had a little brain fart there. And here's what they said. Chief Justice Roberts said, I will not preside over my brain's going disappeared on me for just a second, but I'm not going to preside over those hearings. And why does he not want to do that? Why did he not want to participate in that? It makes me very curious. Well, here's the thing. Then Chuck Schumer, who is now leading the Senate, said, well, we're going to place somebody in his place. And guess what? It was not another Supreme Court justice. It is Patrick Leahy, who is a senator within the Senate. So it's like taking someone from the jury box and putting them into the position as judge over the hearing. Well, why am I saying all these things that are going on with Congress? Well, and why am I saying these things that have to do with Joe Biden, that seems to be signing executive orders in an office that's not the Oval Office, at a desk that's not the Resolute desk, that they're trying to push as many different things through as quickly as they can, as if there's some rush to get some things done. And I want to throw some thoughts out to say, maybe they recognize that there's more going on behind the scenes than what we know. And that has to do with one of the things that came out that of course, it's not going to be heard of in the mainstream media, that President Trump actually, with the Emergency Powers Act and all of these different acts that he is able to do, actually it started back several months ago with the COVID. I think it started back last summer, even late last spring, with the COVID crisis, where he actually said this is an emergency, a national emergency. And when a nation goes under national emergency, then the nation goes under the control of FEMA. And under the control of FEMA, and along with the military being involved, then the true power then lies with the military, and it goes outside of the control of the president and, well, actually the president of the United States as the commander in chief. But President Trump gave that control over the military because of the coup d'etat that was recognized that was happening within the United States, because how the Democrats were using the COVID crisis, causing a crisis that's not really a crisis, to use that to lock down America, to shut down commerce, to shut everything down, to where they could do the mail-in ballots and they can cause the fraudulent elections. They could get everything in place and get the, foreign governments involved to where they could steal an election. Now, I know that that's probably could get us kicked off of YouTube if by even saying that. but I do want to say this is that by causing all of these things that took place in the election, that this would secure and to prove and to show that our nation was taken over by rogue elements, those that are committing the true sedition in the United States, not those people, the handful of people that were led by Antifa and the Boogaloo Boys, where they were taking weapons, breaking out windows, just causing destruction, hurting and attacking police officers, and then a few extra stragglers that were up front that said, oh, let's go check out the Capitol, while they were doing all the destruction and causing fights and all that sort of stuff. And where they were using all of that to say, look, what President Trump is, he's caused an insurrection, where he did nothing like that. Listen to his speech. He didn't encourage any of that. He was exercising his free speech to be able to say, hey, we know what's happened. Here's the evidence that's happened. Now let's go over and peacefully, let's walk over to the Capitol and make sure that the people inside hear your voice. And what does that mean? Well, we're all going to stand outside and we're going to let them hear our voice. But a plan was in place. The FBI knew it. I believe the Washington, D.C. police knew about it, because they didn't have enough people sitting around and protecting the doors. And they knew what was going to happen. They allowed it to happen. They opened the doors, they pulled back the barriers, and these people went inside. In the meantime, we did have a couple natural deaths that took place, including the police officer that they said was hit with a fire extinguisher. He was not. He had some natural things that took place, and they took him to the hospital, and he ended up dying in the hospital because of prior health issues, along with a couple other people that had some health issues, ended up having heart attacks and passing away, all in the midst of everything that was going on. These are not deaths that were created by the insurrection. There was another place where someone was crawling up the side of the wall, got hit in the head by a police officer and fell 30 feet. That killed him. I mean, these are some of the things that took place. So why am I saying all this? Here's the question I have for you. These are the things that we need to research and look at. Did something take place, and is the military in charge? What are we looking at now? Are we saying, why didn't the military act on that day? Why didn't things take place the way we wanted to? Well, the word has come down that I've heard, and I've heard it from Mike Adams, I've heard it through a couple other sources, that 3 or 4 different sources. I think I can't remember the guy's Willie is his last name. Anyway, they were talking about what all happened, and here's the issue, is that they could not turn it over and take over everything right away on the day of the inauguration, the day that all those things were happening. Because if they had, and they not allowed these things to play out, then we probably would have gone into civil war. And they are waiting to allow our Congress to continue to do these things. The Biden tyrannical administration to continue to pass these executive orders to where they will upset the American people to the point saying, we really have voters' remorse. We do not want this president. And then when they've got enough backing among the American people, then they'll say, we're going to finish this off. Now, is that true? I don't know. Are we going to expect it in the next 30 to 60 days? I don't know. It may take a year. It may not happen at all. But what I am saying is that if this is a plan in place, there's logic to it, and this is what's happening. Because why? Because officers within the military and the soldiers that are out there do truly take their oath of office seriously. They do say, we love America and what's happened is wrong, and they truly need to come out and investigate the evidence and really, instead sweeping it under the rug. Just because a court didn't hear the evidence doesn't mean that it was rejected. It just means that a judge made a bad decision. And just because it didn't go any further is because these things require money. They require support. They need to know the American people are still wanting answers. But isn't it interesting that even in Italy, where they use their computer systems and to switch votes, it is known, they have an affidavit from the guy that did it, and the prime minister has stepped down and said, I'm resigning. And he says he's resigning because of the COVID crisis, but in reality, it's all come out because of all the truth that's taken place and what Italy did to our elections. And there are multiple other resignations of leaders in the world that seem to have some type of connection in manipulating our own election results. So keep those things in mind. We need to be praying for the United States. January 11th. Okay, Sandy reminded me. Now here's one of the rumors that took place. And I say rumors because we can only take it from the sources that know more information than we do, because we don't have the direct people that directly involved and can directly tell us what was going on. But
you say this guy was really reliable, though, in his track record.
One of these people is very reliable in his track record and said that President Trump actually on July 11th took the oath of office. So it could very well be that we have two presidents.
No, we have one president.
Well, now let me explain that. And why do we have two presidents? Because one president may be president of Washington, D.C., which is a 10 square mile area, and the other president is the president of the United States. This is why they're trying to push for bringing in D.C. as a new state and Puerto Rico as a new state. This is why they're pushing to pack the Supreme Court. This is why they're pushing to remove the filibuster in the Senate. These are all different things. And by the way, this is very important. They've got to have 2/3 vote in the Senate to do many of these things, including to impeach President Trump. And they don't have the votes to impeach him. So it's more of a showcase. It's part of Washington, D.C. theater. But this is why it's very important that we contact our senators so that they know that they have a backbone, so they can maybe reintroduce them to their backbone, or kahunas, or whatever you want to call it, and say, look, you need to stand up for what's right. And now, one other thing I wanted to say, this is how we also vote. We vote with our pocketbook. And I'm going to tell you, one of the ways that we vote is, where do you bank? I've mentioned this before. Do you bank at Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, Manhattan, any of these major U.S. banks that are connected to the Federal Reserve System? Or do you bank at a local bank or a credit union? If you do bank at one of these big national chain banks, pull your money and put it into one of your local banks. Don't give them your money to use against us. You send it and keep it in your local communities. That is one of the biggest ways you can do it. If you're in the stock market, you need to be looking at where is your money going and who's using it and how many of these people are stifling free speech. And maybe if you just pulled your money out of some of those places like Walmart or Amazon, or some of these big box stores, Target, and you took your money out of their stocks, it's going to force them to buy up their own stocks, use up their own money, and also cause their stock to drop. Wouldn't it be amazing, whether it's AT&T or these people, what is the conglomerate that has some of these hotel chains, which includes the Marriott? Don't use their businesses. Don't buy their product. Let them know that, hey, you've come out against free and fair elections and against the Constitution of the United States. We're not going to participate in commerce with you. That's how we do it. And if people all across the United States would join together as one, it would, even one weekend of not participating in commerce in any of those stores and taking our commerce elsewhere will show these big businesses we mean business. And in fact, don't even go to Walmart, because they're making a deal with China where they are no longer be using made in America products, that they're making deals where it's just going to be made in China products. So why even go to Walmart anymore? Why even participate? I know it's convenient to go there. I know that it's hard to go from several different stores, but sometimes we got to give up convenience in order to protect and preserve this nation. Vote with your words, your money, and with what you do by letting people know. Get the word out. Send. We're going to separate this out as a separate Four Corners News, and that you can send around, put it on your social media, let people know that of what we're talking about, that if there's hope, if there's any means to do anything, these are some action things that we can do. Well, that's all I'm going to say at this point in time. I appreciate all of you that have joined together with us in the chat room, and we are going to bring Sandi back on.
Yeah, but we're still talking about news.
Oh, Sandi's going to come on. She's got some things she's going to. All right, come on in, Sandi. She'll be here in just a second. So appreciate your comments that they're showing there in the chat room as well.
And welcome to Aspen. Of course, Joe and Bob, we're so glad that you're here with us. And we have been, I think we have shown ourselves. I read something that the way we've reacted has shown who the true enemy is. And when I'm talking about I'm talking about the people. When you think about how the conservative people have acted and reacted for the last 15 years, as well as for even longer than that, but even particularly this last year, there's only one group that has risen up to do evil. And I thought it was also interesting that you've talked to me about that Biden is the president of a corporation or something.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the United States, the republic, which everybody gets that wrong, the republic of what we are supposed to be, but that he is tyrannically and evilly leading a different place.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors that's going on. And you say, well, these are having results. They're actually doing things with these edicts that are being passed down, like they're closing down the Keystone Pipeline, and with closing it down, it's affecting 11,000 new jobs projected for this year, and I think a total of 80,000 jobs so far, and that's all around this Keystone Pipeline. It's also forcing them to transport the oil from Alaska by train. And so what's that doing? Well, it's increasing the cost of bringing the oil into the lower 48.
Which is going to bring the cost of oil up in your pocketbook.
That's right.
And heating.
And of all different things, they're saying they're doing it for the green movement. And yet it takes more energy to transport it by train than it is to push it through on a pipeline. Same thing is they'll put it in tankers and they're going to bring it down the ocean and offload it. So there's no
stupid.
Yeah, it's
literally idiotic.
Yeah, these are the things that are happening now. Of course, right now, and they also stopped the fracking.
Oh, Joe said the trains are owned by Soros.
Well, they're owned by, and I'm trying to think, the owner of Berkshire Hathaway. And and he owns Geico and a whole bunch of other and Bank of America. I'm trying to think of what his name is, but he's an elderly gentleman, and he owns the trains as well that's transporting that down. And I just don't remember exactly his names. I don't know if Soros is connected with that.
Well, Joe says
he is, but there's some The thing is that it's a payoff. It's a payoff for the supporters to the Democratic Party for putting Biden in there. And now they're transferring all of that money to them. And it doesn't make sense to us and say, well, it takes more energy. It's less carbon friendly, all that type of thing. And they're using those systems to do it. So it doesn't make sense, does it? And we need, if they're going to hold to that agenda, then we need to hold them accountable to that agenda. And we also need to hold them accountable because they promised all of these union jobs, and they won't hurt them and they won't take them away. And that's exactly what he did in his first 5 days of office. And and of all times, the America, not only we've been shut down and locked down, and many jobs are out of business now because of those lockdowns. And now they're going to do a second whammy with a left-right move and take down another portion of the economy. Don't think that looks smart, but they understand it's for another agenda, and that's to destroy America as we know it and allow China to become the number one nation in the world.
But I also want to encourage people from what you've told me, if these plans have been in the works and the military is taking their oath seriously, and so was President, because you've said over and over, President Trump, who is the president, the only one, it is very smart.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a dumb guy.
And he has some really good advisors around him that did not backstab
But he
him.
also had some other ones that were poor.
He did.
But
That's right.
in the midst of all of that, you told me that all these things that he's doing on the books that are destroying are going to be overturned if this thing plays out shortly after.
If it plays it out, it plays out like is being done, we pray, then that's as soon as the removal of these insurrectionists
these treasonous people.
And that's why they're calling you and I, who voted for President Trump, insurrectionists and seditious.
They're
and
calling us exactly what they are.
Right.
That's a psychological tactic.
They say we shouldn't have free speech. We need to be re-educated, because we're the ones that are actually just saying, well, we're Americans and we actually know what our rights are. And the sad thing is, we come from the generation that actually still taught history in the schools the right way. And that's why President Trump had the 1776 project to restore patriotic.
I heard the 1776 project was stopped.
Yes, that's why he had it in there, to restore that in our schools. And that was the one that was on day one. They stopped the project. Why? Because they don't want our children to know history. And by the way, that's our fault as parents and grandparents for not giving our children true history of these United States
and not checking it out. And honestly, folks, you've heard me say it on many shows, do not put your kid in public school.
Exactly, because this is what
or
happens.
Private, for that matter. Private's better than public, but you can't, if you put him in the system, you just gave your child to Molech, you gave him to the government, you just sacrificed your kid on the altar, and they will be brainwashed and they will become a pawn of the powers that be.
Just like these basement kids that still live at home with mom and dad, they came out of their basements from playing video games, and now they're doing live action role plays with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and thinking that getting paid for it. And they think they're actually doing something good for the society, where they're continuing to burn down businesses and buildings over in Oregon and Washington. You know, why? You know, they got the election, they got the government that they want. Well, that's what happens when you have bad education, and they are, you know, they weren't spanked as kids probably, and nothing happened over the entire summer, where they were allowed to do that, and they were encouraged by who? By Kamala Harris,
who did, by the way, the very things that Trump was supposedly impeached upon. The Democratic Party, like Kamala Harris and many, many others, outright said evil things, and to create chaos and havoc, et cetera, et cetera. They did those things blatantly, and yet they sit by in their evil seats, in their evils.
That's right.
Because I'm sorry, they're pure evil. They're run by another spirit that's demonic.
And they raised money for funds to get these kids bonded out if they got arrested. But what do these kids do? They actually know that they are in cities where the city attorneys, the attorney generals, that were put into power, that will turn their other head, say, oh, you didn't do anything wrong, we're going to let you go, no charges, all charges dropped. That's why they're rioting in the particular cities that they're rioting in, and that's why they're causing such havoc. So we got to recognize where the enemy is. Now, the other side I wanted to say is that if Biden is president of Washington, D.C., and President Trump is the rightfully elected president of the United States, then actually we have two different presidents. We have two presidents at the same time. Now, get this. This is the interesting thing. And I always put these things in the back of my mind when I hear them. I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I don't know where you might stand on this person. Kim Clement actually said back in
He's
the early.
a prophet he worked in the prophetic back. He died probably 10, 15 years ago.
10 years ago. And he had a prophetic word that said that America would have 2 presidents. So isn't that interesting that right now we have a rightfully elected president? That was President Trump. And he said, well, he doesn't have the White House. He doesn't have do you have to have the White House if a coup has taken place?
So you want your president,
and he's actually set up the office
in the den of the lions. Yeah. Do you really want him there?
No. And he set up of all different things, the office of the former president of the United States of America. Partially it's kind of making fun of Joe Biden, who set up the office of the president-elect of the United States right after the election. So, wow, that's kind of bold.
Tammy reminded us that Trump never conceded.
He never did. And
there's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that. And, you say, well, is this QAnon stuff or whatever? All I can say is,
you tell me those sources were reliable.
What I've heard from these resources are not QAnon people, and they're trying to take those people that were following Q and QAnon and trying to really take them and put them in the mud. What I do want to say is there was quite an awakening that took place during the QAnon movement. That is irrefutable. And now, but we have to recognize that we're not sitting back watching and eating popcorn and watching the show. We're actually being involved, doing the things that actually make a difference, and do the things that actually touch not only our city, but those businesses that are in each one of our cities, like the Walmarts and stuff, that we need to be saying, look, we recognize who you are, what you're doing, what you're saying, that you don't recognize me as a valued customer, and therefore then I'm going to take my shopping dollars somewhere else until you actually recognize that we have a voice and that we want things done the right way, the just way, and don't silence us. The same thing with the social media. I've not been on Facebook. And why? Because every time I click on Facebook, money goes in, because they're getting data from me and they're selling it and they're sending it somewhere that I don't even know. And I'm not going to give Facebook or Twitter or these accounts any more of my money. I'm going to use other sources and avoid those platforms. So we just need to be aware. Watch what's going on.
And our money should go to mom and pop places anyway.
Yeah,
not the big box stores.
Keep it local. Now, keep your businesses.
Let's shift gears for a minute on a couple things. Just an FYI, the mail-in ballots that they fraudulently used, of course, now that the Democrats stood, and even though there were no people, dead people, multiple people, nobody voted, they just made them up. Well, now they say mail-in ballots are bad, even though it's a hypocrisy. But let's go beyond that. Now, changing gears to CV, the China virus. Isn't it interesting that right after Biden takes office, that he changes the policy on how to test for China virus? Now, we all know that you only need to have 29 cycles to find out if it is a positive or a negative test.
And maybe not even that many.
And maybe not even that many. And they were going up to 45, which will create a positive test. But now he's come out and said, oh, let's just keep it at 29. See, they all played these parts. If you're just coming through here and you're hearing this, guys, wake up. If you have believed the lies of the manipulation of COVID and of the Democratic Party, it's time you wake up, because the enemy comes to kill, steal, and devour you. And the enemy, yes, is a spiritual, but there's a physical enemy too that's turning the hearts of the masses. And you need not look any further than the left side of this nation and look at other nations that have already done that. Is this where you want to go? We need to be fighting for our nation. Of course, Mark always talks about a constitutional convention. That's an option as well.
That's a really good option.
And this isn't over. And I want to encourage you, don't step aside because you think it's pointless. Continue to vote, continue to make your voice known. It's not pointless, and continue to war and pray.
Yeah, because this is what we do. We pray, we ask the Father what to do, how to do it, where to go. And then what do? We listen, and we find out, we get our marching orders, or he just breathes courage into us. And then when something comes up in our face, we go, oh, I'm going to act on that. I'm going to do it right now, because this is no longer that we are no longer in the era or the season of apathy. Understand, we've talked about not being apathetic for years, but you know what we've done? We just rolled over and said, don't bother me with the truth. I was talking with somebody the other day, and another lady came in, and I was talking about some of these different things, and the lady who was a Christian said, I don't watch the news. I really want to know about any of these different things. And as I just mentioned, I said a few different things. Man, her leg just started shaking, and she was like getting very anxious, and she just didn't want to really know about these different things. Well, guess what? It's time to put on our big boy pants or big girl pants and say, hey, guess what? It's more than just me being able to do my little thing, get my hair cut, go do my little shopping thing and go home and hide within my house. It's not the time anymore. This is what we do. We have to make sure that our voices are heard, and we use and we pay. We any money we spend, it goes to where it needs to go. And let's no longer fund the beast. Yeah. By the way, I did want to say this, and it has to do with that PCR test that Sandy was talking about. It was very interesting, and I saw a picture of it. I need to find it for myself. But in the PCR test, they take that long Q-tip thing and they stick it right up there
to implant a chip,
and right up to that membrane that's up in the nasal passage, right next to the brain. And what's close to that? It is the pituitary. Is that right? The pituitary gland. Which is that right? Is that what it's called?
I guess.
That's your God consciousness. It's a thing that allows you to have God consciousness that's up there in your brain. And when they stick it up there, the whole goal is to create a disruption. They say, well, that's where we've got to get the RNA fragments that we're going to run through that PCR test and run at so many thresholds.
That's such a lie.
If someone's sick, all you have to do is swab their nasal passage. All you have to do is
get your cheek.
Or do the cheek. If it's going to be there, it'll be there, because otherwise you're hunting for something. But the fact is
they weren't
that
hunting, they were destroying.
The fact is that those PCR Q-tips are primed with
COVID,
the coronavirus, which is that oftentimes makes people sick within 4 days. But what else is it doing? Is it creating an infection up there in the brain? And the question is, how many brain? Jim Willie was talking about that. That's the name I was trying to remember. He was talking about how many people with brain infections are we going to start seeing in this next year from all these people that said, oh, I was around somebody that tested positive, I better go get tested. What type of insanity is that? Come on. We need to wake up and say, if somebody around you tested positive, this thing is not killing people. And the fact is that we have no flu this year, but also we have all these corona tests.
He's being facetious, guys. These things are the flu.
Yeah, this is the flu. It's the flu. In fact, it's less deadly than flu, and more people are dying of the shot, these COVID-19 shots, than they are. It's just better to go ahead. If you're going to get sick, and just make sure you stay strong and keep your immune system up, and you're going to be okay. And if there is some inflammation that happens in your lungs and there's a problem, there are remedies to it, and you can survive this thing. So, okay, it's my little soapbox there, but stop playing into their game. That's what's happening. And I know some of you working, well, my job requires it. I've got to have one every so many. If you get a PCR test within 3 weeks of the last one, the last one was negative, you'll probably come up positive on the second time.
Because of what they've already done with sticking that COVID in you. And by the way, you have rights on that too. You just have to do the research.
Yes, and
you don't have to take those tests.
It's incumbent upon us.
And do not take the vaccine under any circumstances.
Yeah, it's incumbent upon us to be smart and to use these things and to present this and challenge this, which has become the status quo. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So,
well, that's a little bit of news.
It is. So if anybody can find that image, please send that image to me.
Which image is that?
And it's an image that was put together, and it shows the image of the PCR thing, how they're doing it, and they're sticking up the nose. And then there's some ancient Egyptian
That's how they did the brain. They
yeah,
stuck that up
they
there.
stuck that. They did
Made the
stuff.
brain mush, and that's how they mummified.
Isn't it interesting how there's so many parallels and to what they did in ancient Egypt? So,
Tammy, we're hoping you're with us this weekend too.
yes, we miss you, Tammy.
All right. Well, we are obviously not getting to the teaching tonight.
I wasn't supposed to go that long.
It's okay. It's okay. I really wanted you to get the news out there, what you told me this morning, which you did. And people need to know that. And you also need to know and be encouraged not to give up, because walking in spirit and truth is also being abreast of what's going on. And if you can't get it from the main news sources, there have to be news sources that you can get it from. And this is one place you can.
We want to inspire you to live life abundantly now. It's not a future, oh yeah, I understand we're going to be going, we're going to the land, we're going to have a greater exodus, all that type of thing. We're living now. We prepare for our future, but we have to live in the present. And in order to live in this present, we've actually been told, it's been promised and it's been commanded that we've been made more than conquerors through him who loved us. And if we're going to be more than conquerors, then we have to understand that the warfare that's being used against us, that's playing out in the natural, has to be confronted. And we deal with it in our prayer closets, and we deal with it after we come out of our prayer closet with boldness, with courage, and to encourage one another, because the joy of the Lord is our strength. We're not losing hope. We are establishing hope within our lives. And not only that, for the generations that follow us. All this world is looking for is people that will stand up for truth. They're going to stand up for right. And that's you and that's me. And I hope that this inspires you. Yeah, we get angry about some of the stuff that's happening, but what do we do with it? We can air it to people that believe like us, or we can start taking action. We can recognize where our money's going and not feed the beast any longer.
Amen.
So, well, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the show this evening. Share it, like it, give us some thumbs up as you listen to it. Share it around on your social media. Let people know that there's people like you and I.
Preferably not Facebook.
Yeah. Facebook may not allow it up there for very long, but we can try and put it on MeWe, put it on Gab, put it on Telegram. And I understand there's some parts of Parler, maybe the online version is showing up. They're supposed to have Parler back up and running here in the very near future, maybe by the end of the month. So let's stay in touch and continue to communicate back and forth. So on behalf of Walking in Spirit and Truth, this is John Craig.
And this is Sandi.
Till next time, shalom.
Shalom.